A household in Japan spends noticeably less on groceries than a comparable household in America on the same size cart, buying largely the same categories of food. Food prices in Japan are not lower. In most categories, they're actually higher. So the gap isn't about what things cost. It's about a set of habit stores in America have quietly engineered you out of using. None of what I'm about to show you requires an app, a membership card, or a single coupon. These are 23 specific tricks, some habits, and some outright consumer rights that Japanese shoppers use from the moment they walk through the door to the moment they leave, including one household system near the end that makes it almost mathematically difficult to overspend again. Start with even 5 of these on your next trip, and you will feel it at the register. Trick 1 starts at the exit, not the entrance, and it catches something most people never think to check. Pricing scanners misfire more often than people assume. Studies have found errors on roughly 1 in every 30 items rung up. In Japan, this habit is called rishito checku, receipt check, and it's simple. Before leaving, shoppers scan their receipt line by line against what they remember the shelf price being. Most American stores have a scanner accuracy policy printed in fine text at customer service. If an item rings up wrong, you're often owed it free or at the lower price. A 2-minute habit at the exit recovers real money across a year of shopping. Catching the register's mistakes is one thing. The next trick prevents you from ever needing to. Trick 2 happens the night before, at your kitchen table, not in the store. Japanese households read the weekly store flyer, called a chirashi, before ever leaving the house, circling only what the family actually needs that week. So the list is essentially written by the sale itself. Shoppers who arrive with a written list consistently spend meaningfully less than those without one, and the difference has almost nothing to do with willpower. It's structural. A written list closes decisions before the store gets a chance to reopen them. Once the list exists, trick 3 is about the one number on every shelf tag most people never actually read. Every price tag carries 2 numbers, the large sticker price and a small unit price tucked in the corner showing cost per ounce or per unit. That second number is the only one that actually matters, and stores count on you ignoring it. A jumbo size regularly costs more per ounce than the standard size beside it, precisely because shoppers assume bigger automatically means cheaper and never check. This pattern repeats across cereal, coffee, oil, nearly every packaged category in the store. Once you're reading the unit price, the meat counter is the next place stores hope your attention drifts. Trick 4 is the difference between a whole chicken and the same bird already cut apart. A whole chicken costs a fraction per pound of what the identical bird costs once it's broken into pre-cut breasts on foam trays 2 shelves over. Same animal, different packaging, different math. Japanese kitchens treat the whole bird as the default because a few minutes of knife work turns one purchase into a roast, sandwiches, a stir-fry, and a pot of stock at close to half the cost per pound. Even a whole chicken leaves usable parts most households throw straight in the trash, which is exactly where the next trick starts. Trick 5 lives in a section every store has, and almost none advertise. Dented cans, creased boxes, and imperfect produce get sold at a steep discount in nearly every supermarket, usually tucked somewhere inconvenient, a back corner near a service entrance. Japanese stores put this exact section at the front under a sign that reads, "Wake Ari," roughly, "There's a reason," and shoppers head there first on purpose because a dented can of tomatoes is still tomatoes. American stores hide the identical inventory because they'd rather you buy the full-price version 2 aisles over. Hunting for that cart every visit is close to free money hiding in plain sight. Trick 6 is at the butcher counter, and it's a habit that's nearly vanished from American grocery culture. Bones, trim, and knuckles behind the meat counter usually get sold for pennies or handed over free if you simply ask. Japanese cooking has always treated these as raw material. A pound of scraps simmered for a few hours becomes a gallon of the deepest broth a home kitchen can produce. Most stores don't advertise this because they'd rather sell you a boxed carton off the shelf than hand you the free version of the same thing. The same principle, asking for what isn't advertised, carries straight into the spice aisle. Trick 7 turns one of the most heavily marked up sections in the entire store into an afterthought. A small jar of a common spice in the main aisle can run several dollars. The identical spice, often from the identical supplier, costs a fraction of that at a dollar store or a specialty market. Japan has an entire culture built around hyaku-in shops, 100-yen stores, where households buy salt, dried seaweed, and everyday spices without a second thought, because the product is the same and the price isn't. American shoppers skip the cheaper aisle out of habit alone. Once spices stop coming from the main aisle, the layout of the store itself becomes the next thing worth understanding. Trick 8 is about how the entire building has been arranged against you since roughly the 1950s. Produce, meat, dairy, and bakery sit on the outer walls of nearly every modern supermarket. The middle aisles hold the processed, high-margin goods placed deliberately in the path between one fresh section and the next. Japanese stores follow the identical layout, and Japanese shoppers work it in reverse on purpose, filling the basket with fresh categories first, visiting the center aisles last for staples only. By the time the basket's half full, decision fatigue has already worked in your favor instead of the stores. Shopping the perimeter only pays off if what's on it is actually fresh, which brings us to Trick 9. Trick 9 is a small physical habit that adds days of shelf life to almost everything dated. Stock is loaded front to back, oldest product forward, so it sells before it expires. Standard industry practice. Reaching past the front row to the back of the shelf routinely buys 3 to 5 extra days of freshness on milk, eggs, yogurt, anything dated, at the identical price. Japanese shoppers do this reflexively enough that it has its own informal name in home economics guides. It costs nothing and takes 1 extra second. Knowing where the fresher date hides is useful. Knowing when the store wants certain products gone entirely is a different trick altogether. Trick 10 is about timing your visit to the exact hour markdowns happen. Meat departments typically mark down anything near its sell-by date within a narrow morning window, often the first hour or two after opening, before the fresh delivery replaces it. A shopper who arrives right at opening can walk out with meat at a third to half off, straight into the freezer. Japanese shoppers respect this early riser habit as a point of pride rather than something to hide. The discount window is narrow. Once the new stock hits the shelf, the stickers disappear and the price resets. What the clock does for meat, package size does for almost everything else, starting with Trick 11. Trick 11 is the lie hiding in the smallest bag on the shelf. The smallest package of nearly any staple is almost always the most expensive per ounce. The largest is almost always the cheapest, often by 20 to 40%. Japanese households have long bought staples like rice in large sacks, stored properly in a sealed container that keeps them fresh for months. Americans reach for the small bag, assuming it must be the better deal, simply because it costs less at the register, an assumption that quietly costs real money every single month. Buying big from one store still leaves savings on the table, though, which is where Trick 12 comes in. Trick 12 breaks the habit of treating one supermarket as the source for everything. A single weekly trip to a single store feels efficient, but no one store is the cheapest source for every category. Japan has a name for the alternative: kaimono meguri, a shopping rotation where a household buys fish from the fishmonger, produce from the stand, and dry goods from the supermarket because each specialist consistently beats the generalist on price and freshness. The American equivalent exists in a farmer's market, a warehouse club, and an ethnic grocery, used deliberately instead of a single stop. It takes more time. It also runs a genuinely lower total bill. Trick 13 makes the multi-stop strategy actually pay off by giving you somewhere to put what you buy. A dedicated freezer, even a modest used one, typically pays for itself within a year of steady use. It lets you buy meat in bulk at wholesale pricing, catch every single markdown at the meat counter without racing to eat it in 2 days, and freeze fruit at its cheapest point in season to use all year. Japanese kitchens, despite famously small refrigerators, are built around freezing in careful, labeled single portions. The American equivalent is simply a second freezer running quietly in the garage. Trick 14 is the tax you pay for being in a hurry, sitting in plain sight in the produce section. Pre-washed, pre-cut, pre-cubed produce routinely costs 2 to 4 times what the whole version costs. For roughly 90 seconds of knife work, most people are fully capable of doing themselves. Japanese kitchens rarely buy pre-cut anything because that 90 seconds is simply understood to be part of cooking, not an inconvenience to pay around. Across a week of shopping, that convenience tax adds up to real money for identical food on the plate. Once the pre-cut tax is gone, Trick 15 targets the tier of product sitting right beside the one you usually reach for. Many staples are sold in visible quality tiers, where the difference is cosmetic, not functional. A slightly less uniform grade of rice, oil, or produce, priced well below the top tier for a nearly identical product. Japanese shoppers buy the second tier without any hesitation because the value gap is obvious once you know to look. American stores rarely advertise their own equivalents. Odd-sized eggs, imperfect bakery loaves, seconds bins, but they're sitting there on nearly every trip. Trick 16 is a legal loophole most shoppers never think to use on purpose. A manufacturer coupon and a store sale come from 2 entirely separate sources, which means they legally stack at the register. The full value of both applies to the same item. Japanese shoppers stack discount tickets against store campaigns as a matter of routine, treating the double discount as the entire point. Watching for a sale on something you already have a coupon for turns a small discount into a large one, and it's completely within the rules. Trick 17 depends on understanding that sales aren't random. They repeat on a cycle. Most grocery promotions rotate on a cycle of roughly 4 to 8 weeks. Track the pattern for a few months and your local store's rhythm becomes predictable, which means you can stock up on any staple in enough quantity to cover the gap until it cycles back on sale, and stop paying full price for that item indefinitely. Japanese shoppers track a nearly identical recurring sale system by store and weekday. The cycle only rewards you, though, if the item is actually on the shelf when the sale hits. Trick 18 protects you even when it isn't. If a sale item is out of stock, most stores are required to issue a rain check, a slip locking in the sale price for whenever it's back. That pad usually sits under the counter, not on top of it, and nobody volunteers it. Most shoppers just buy the pricier brand next to the empty spot instead. Asking takes under a minute, and the sale price stays protected, sometimes for weeks. Trick 19 is about a display built to look like a bargain that almost never is one. The big promotional stack at the end of an aisle is usually a paid placement. Brands pay for that visibility, and the products sitting there are frequently at full price, while the actual sale sits quietly on the regular shelf with a small tag underneath. Walking straight past the end cap to the shelf tag inside the aisle is a simple habit that consistently avoids paying premium prices dressed up to look like a discount. Trick 20 happens before the shopping list is even written. Spend 3 minutes looking through the fridge, freezer, and pantry before writing anything down. The Japanese word for the instinct behind this is mottainai, a quiet discomfort at the idea of letting something go to waste. The average American household throws away roughly a third of the food it buys. Japanese households considerably less, and the gap traces back almost entirely to this 3-minute habit done before every single trip, not after. Trick 21 stacks discounts a second time at checkout instead of on the shelf. A cashback credit card, a store loyalty card, and a receipt scanning rebate app can all apply to the same purchase simultaneously, and almost nobody combines all three at once. Japanese shoppers do this constantly with loyalty points and mobile payment rewards layered together. Individually, each discount looks small. Stacked, the combined total regularly runs 8 to 15% off every trip, indefinitely on top of everything else on this list. Trick 22 turns all of that into muscle memory instead of guesswork. Keep a small notebook, physical or in your phone, with one staple item per page: milk, eggs, coffee, rice, whatever your household buys monthly. Record only the lowest price you've ever actually paid, calculated per unit, so it's genuinely comparable. When a sale appears, check it against your own number before anything goes in the cart. If it doesn't beat your best price, skip it. If it does, stock up and update the number. Within months, you can read any shelf and know instantly whether a price is real. And now, trick 23, the one every other trick on this list quietly rests on. In 1904, a Japanese journalist named Hani Motoko created a household ledger called the Kakeibo, and it has anchored Japanese personal finance ever since. It's a small book, filled in by hand every week, sorting spending into a handful of simple categories. No app carries the same weight because the entire power of it comes from the friction of writing the number down yourself, seeing it, not just having it tracked silently in the background. Every trick in this video, from the receipt check at the register to the stacked rebate at checkout, only becomes real savings once it's written down somewhere you actually look. The Kakeibo is the workbench every other trick in this list sits on. 23 tricks. Pick 5 to start this week. The flyer, the unit price, the perimeter shop, the rain check, and the notebook are the fastest to feel. By the end of the month, you'll see it at checkout. Tell me in the comments which of these you're trying first, and if there's one you were already doing without knowing it had a name. I'll see you in the next one.